Hey everyone, and welcome to the Human Design Podcast with me, your host, Emma Dunwoody. I'm a qualified master coach and human behaviour specialist, as well as being a qualified human design coach. And I work with clients every single day to answer the big questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? I also assist them to transition from the person they think they should be to the person they really are on the inside. I teach people how to actually live their design instead of just knowing it. And if this is something that you want to do too, well, stay tuned or reach out for private coaching or Human Design Unpacks, where I show you exactly how to live your design. Hey everyone, and welcome to today's podcast. I'm super excited today to talk about something that has been, quite a challenge in my life, especially as a teenage girl in my 20s and even into my 30s, all about body image. I had a belief that I was fat. I mean, I look back at my school photos and think, how did I even think that? But body image and eating and dieting and wellness, these are things that so many women are challenged with. And I really think that it's getting worse, not better at the moment because of things like social media. So today I have the amazing Caroline Ofenstein here with me today to talk about body image and how we can do a better job at trusting ourselves and taking care of ourselves. Caroline, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to dive into all these topics today.
Amazing. So before we jump in, obviously I would love you to actually tell my listeners, what you do and of course, what your human design is.
Yeah. So again, my name is Caroline and I am a holistic health coach. So I really go beyond just telling someone eat like this and train like this. My approach is just like it sounds, holistic. So we're talking mind, body, spirit within wellness and really helping women come back to their bodies, come back to that intuition and trust in themselves while having a foundation of exercise science and nutrition science. So it's a beautiful kind of pillared approach to wellness. And my human design, I am a mental projector. So my strategy is to wait for the invitation, which is something I am always working on, getting better at, patience.
Love it.
Yeah. And my profile is 5'1".
Yeah. Amazing. Beautiful. I love what you said in there as well about what you do, trusting our bodies. But the thing that also really stood out is like it's the piece between intuition and science. It's like having the pillars. And I feel like that's definitely a lot of my work as well, because I think one thing that we can get caught in is either being overly invested in the science or overly invested in intuition. And I really do believe that balance is the key. But let's just sort of kick off with talking about like, what are the challenges that you see that women face in this world of body image or health or well-being? Like, what are the biggest challenges you see in your work most commonly?
Oh my gosh, where do I start? I feel like we are bombarded with extremes. So yes, on the end of diet culture, right, which is, I believe, like a $70 billion industry, the weight loss industry. But then you said something so beautiful just now, like, where is that balance between intuitive eating and the science and keeping our bodies healthy? And that is a lot of what I specialize in. I call it the gray area approach, because it seems like we only have two options and they're both extreme in my opinion, which is, okay, I have to weigh, track, and measure everything I eat until the day that I die. If I stop doing that for one day, I'm going to gain weight or whatever it may be. Or there are kind of those who are quote unquote anti-diet that think you should never ever follow any type of rules. You should only eat intuitively, that sort of belief, which I would say those are both extreme. So I really like to help women come back to that middle ground, that balance, like you said, and how do we combine some of that? Because maybe it was really easy to just wake up and eat intuitively when we were hunter and gatherers, but if you go to the grocery store today, a lot of those foods are engineered for us to overeat them. So
Yeah.
it can be really hard to do, like, I guess an easier way to say this is intuitive eating usually isn't intuitive at first.
That's
So
exactly what I was like, as you were speaking,
Mhm.
like I wanted to say straight off the bat, like, or at least ask, like, I think one of the biggest challenges is we think we're intuitively eating, but we're not intuitively eating. So how do we know?
Mhm.
I mean, I know for me, God, this is a long road for me. And I do feel like I'm at a point, I do follow a keto type diet. Um, but one of the things, for example, and I do fasting, like I try to fast most days. But, I run my business Monday to Wednesday, and often Tuesday and Wednesday morning, like there's no, like I have tried to fast through those times, but I can't think, like, and I need the biggest piece of freaking toast with almond butter and honey on it, like it's just like get that in my body. But how
Mhm.
do we actually get to that point where we can trust our inverted commas intuition? Because if we just go, right, that's it, I'm just going to eat what I feel like eating, I feel like most people are going to be stuck in a sugar trap or a carbs trap, or they're going to be stuck in something that they think is intuitive. But actually, it's like you say, it's more that the food is set up for them to feel that way, so they eat more of it.
Mhm. Yeah, great question. And so it's really a practice, right? And it does take time. I know those are two things that nobody loves to hear. We're in this age of instant gratification, right? But it truly is a practice, especially for most women. And I say that because, again, I'm definitely generalizing here, but especially the women that I work with, and myself included, we can go into a meditation, and our subconscious will pull up a memory from when we were sometimes 5 or even like 5 to 10, where there was either a comment made about our bodies or something that our caregivers, like how they related to food, stuck with us, or bullying, all of these situations that were programmed into us at such a very, very early age. And so now we're adults and we don't need those behaviors anymore, right? They've become unskillful, but however we related to food as a kid to get through those challenging times, I mean, we can't for me, like, let's say that was 25 years ago, I'm not going to be able to change that overnight,
Mm.
especially because the food industry has changed along with us over that time. So
Mm.
it really does come back to a lot of awareness, right? Which is almost the first step of any spiritual program that you want to dive into, and slow changes. A lot of patience, a lot of eating slower, a lot of checking back in with your hunger and fullness. So it's definitely a process, but that's, one simple practice that I recommend to all of my clients is just checking in with hunger and fullness at before and after every meal.
Yeah.
So without judgment, with pure curiosity, how hungry am I right now? Why am
Yeah.
I choosing to eat this? Am I choosing to eat this because it's a sugary treat and it's delicious and it's my friend's birthday? Cool, have it, but just pay attention to that. And then after you eat that, how full are you? Are
Yeah.
you super ravenous still, or are you almost, like Thanksgiving full, like 12 out of 10
Oh my
satiation
God.
scale?
We
And
still
that's okay too.
yeah, we still to this day, we talk about, when we go to certain things, wearing our Thanksgiving Day pants. We don't have Thanksgiving Day here in
Right,
Australia,
right.
but it was an episode of The Simpsons. So I want to just back up a little bit, because I think what's really important about what you said is that, like, nothing happens fast. And we talk a lot on this podcast about mindset, about belief systems, and about changing belief systems. And we understand that change isn't easy, especially in the beginning. It can be, really uncomfortable. And then it gets really challenging, because we're actually battling against conscious choice of who we want to become and our conditioned neural pathways. And I think the thing that, as you were speaking, I was like, wow, it's like it's amplified, because if I'm wanting to change a habit, let's say, of going for a walk every day, and you don't go for a walk every day, but you want to go for a walk every day. If you want to change that habit by day 3, like day 1, you're smashing it. Day 2 feels good. Day 3, like, by day 4, you're not going. So we know from a behavioral point of view that if you turn up for day 4, day 5, and day 6, things are going to feel great. Then you're going to have another plateau at day 10. But the thing that I thought was really fascinating as you were speaking is, so we already know that this how we change our habits, and everything we do is a habit, whether we do it or we don't do it, it's a habit. It's already challenging, but amplify that with the actual food that we're eating. You know, as you were speaking, one of the things that I was really conscious of, like, I'm an emotional authority and I've got an undefined spleen. So what that means is there's a lot going on inside me, in my energy, not just my body, my energy, that's like, if I feel uncomfortable, it's going to go to default modes of like, how do I feel more comfortable right now? And if the food that we're eating is actually amplifying that unresourceful choice or that unresourceful behavior or that avoidance strategy, that's just making it even harder, right?
Yeah, exactly. And human design definitely does play a role. I've studied a little bit of the links between digestion and kind of what nutritional protocols can work best for different energy types. And I know me as a projector, which I know maybe like 10% of what you know about human design. I know just enough to be dangerous. But one thing that I learned in that course was that I do a lot better with small meals spaced throughout the day. And I loved learning that because it almost like took some pressure off, because again, myself, don't need to get totally into my history, but I've struggled with disordered eating, had really intense diets throughout a bodybuilding career and things like that. So I've been on every end of the spectrum too. And I've had a lot of unlearning to do of those rules. So learning more about my own human design and taking some courses in nutrition and human design and learning that, oh, like that's why I like to eat 5 or 6 meals a day when I know some people eat 3 and they feel great. You know, like that's probably why you don't want to fast every day, because sometimes you're burning through that energy so much more, right?
Exactly. And I think this is so beautiful. Like what you touched on is understanding our human design as well. Like, my unresourceful beliefs of, you know, I am fat, that was a part of my identity, came from a kid in prep who basically told me, as I was taking a drink from the drinking fountain, to move over, fatty. And it was in that moment that I was like, oh God, like I'm fat because someone called me fat. And I think one of the things about human design is it really sort of teaches us, it gives us the opportunity to avoid the conditioning. You know, we can teach our children really differently. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that for me, as a little kid, the age of 5, I eat a lot. You know, as a manifesting generator, I'm married to a projector. We often joke, like, my plate is 3 times the size of his plate, and he doesn't eat until like 2:00 in the afternoon. He eats his breakfast, you know. Whereas I will, you know, between the hours I eat my fair share of food. But isn't it, you know, it's so beautiful to try and avoid these conditionings when, like, I have 2 manifesting generated children. So I'm like, you know, go for gold, just eat, you know, knock yourselves out, because you're burning a lot of energy. But I think what the thing that human design gives us is permission to eat the way we're designed to eat. Now, one of the things that I'm really conscious of with human design is I feel like with a lot of the PHS, which is where the nutrition comes into it, we've got to be really careful, because what can happen is that it's just another diet. It's just another fad. It's just another someone else telling you the rules of how you're meant to eat and how you're meant to digest. And I think one of the big things is, like, it's great to have the information, but to run the experiment. But I kind of feel like that's the same with your work anyway. So do you, like, when you work with a client, do you kind of go, okay, well, these are the goals. It might be weight loss. It might be increased energy. And then do you help them, like, experiment what's right for them? Or, like, what do you advise for people to come to a place that they really do start to trust their food choices, their eating choices, their exercise choices?
Yeah. And you're right that people usually have a variety of goals, right? Some of us are purely focused on health. Some of us are focused on athletic performance or weight loss. And what I do today is, depending on their goals, you know, we're always going to get really, really clear on that point B first. Where you're at right now is your point A. Getting crystal clear on that point B is so, so, so helpful, because if someone comes to me and they say, well, I just want to feel healthy, you could ask 10 different people what healthy means and you're going to get 10 different answers. So getting crystal clear on like, what does healthy mean to you? What does it look like during the day when you're making food choices if your goal is to feel confident in your skin? What does that look like, when you're making your grocery list or meal plan for the week? So that's always where I really like to start. And what I have learned over the years, so I've been coaching for almost 7 years now. And whenever there is kind of weight loss on the front of our minds, that weight loss is almost never sustainable if you aren't also taking care of the inner work, right?
100%.
Those external changes just don't last, because anyone can push through like a 12-week diet, let's say. If you're like, I'm going to shred for summer, you can push through those 12 weeks. But what do you do when it's week 13 and say you were just running a program and that program's over now? What do you do now? So if you're not really thinking about, well, what are my beliefs about food? What do I believe to be true about my body? If you're not taking care and asking yourself those tough questions, it's really hard to see those external results. So a lot of my work today.
And I just have to jump in, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I think that this is such an important point, because one of the things I remember back when I was studying, and it was this moment of like, most people who carry excess weight do it to stay safe. And they do it to either because they've had some sort of trauma in their childhood. They do it because they make sure that they're not attractive, they're not seen, they can hide. I think that what you just said is so incredibly important, because most people, a lot of people can push through and get to that point, but it will not be maintained unless your identity says it is safe to lose the weight. It is safe to be slimmer. It is safe to be who I want to be. Because if your unconscious mind doesn't think it's safe, there's no way you'll maintain it. It's just behavioral science 101.
Yes, exactly. So that is why a lot of the work I do today is not really focused on weight loss. I think of weight loss as a byproduct. If you're really taking care of your internal environment, if you know the basics of macronutrients, of protein, carbs, and fats, if you have some type of daily movement that you hold yourself accountable to, weight loss can happen. But you have to really be, exactly like you said, creating that subconscious environment so that you then feel safe to maintain that result that you're looking for. Exactly.
Yeah. And I love what you said. I want to come back to understanding, what you put in your mouth. But there's also this other piece that I think is really important to understand around food from a behavior point of view, is that so often food is about control. If you're feeling out of control in your life, then you will control food in some way. Anorexia is oftentimes comes in a way that a person feels out of control in their life, either a domineering parent or a domineering coach, or someone who's, basically controlling their life. So they learn to control their food. So food can also be a really big indicator that you feel out of control on the inside. You feel like, oh, I don't have the internal certainty. I don't have the trust. I don't have the faith in myself. But I can control what goes in my mouth. My mother's a classic for this. She's not anorexic, but she's definitely used food as a tool to maintain control. So I think that's another thing I think is really important just to point out on that. Do you want to add anything to that?
It's so funny you said that, because I was like, where do I put this in? We should probably talk about control
put it
too.
in here.
Yes. I totally agree. And I hear that a lot from clients as we start digging and going deeper in our sessions. Control comes up for almost everybody, and myself included. And it can be a really uncomfortable practice to bring trust and surrender back to your body and to food. But oh my gosh, is it rewarding, right? Because it's almost like, an analogy that I use sometimes is all these diet rules of like, this is a good food, this is a bad food, this is healthy, I shouldn't eat that. Oh my God, how could I have eaten that? I feel guilty. All of those are like boulders that you're putting in this heavy backpack, and you just carry that around forever until you do the inner work. and doing this work of bringing trust and surrendering to your body's hunger and fullness cues. When you start to turn the volume up on those a little bit higher, you get to set that backpack down. And it's this like, oh my God, that feels good.
Yeah.
But it is scary, right? Because it's pushing the edges of your comfort zone. It's unfamiliar at first, but that release of your tight grip of control around food is one of like the most beautiful things you can give yourself.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I totally resonate. I think that's one of the big things. And I even notice sometimes when I'm, if I'm especially, stressed out or don't have play time or relax time, all of a sudden I'm like, that's it. I'm starting a detox on Monday. And I'm like, oh, no, actually I'm not. I need a rest.
Yeah.
Clearly this is what's going on. So I think that that's so powerful. And for everyone listening, especially if what we've just talked about resonates with you, please listen again because it's super powerful. I want to ask you, and this is one of the things that even to this day, I really wrestle with. So one of the things for me is food. I've been on a huge, my dad did all the cooking at home. We hardly ever ate takeout. So I grew up in a pretty healthy family. Then in my 20s, when I met Justin and we got married, that all just did a total U-turn. And he actually ended up in hospital at 28. Yes, listeners, his Saturn return. He actually just pulled a muscle, but it was so excruciating he couldn't move. They thought he'd, broken his back, blah, 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 blah. But they tested him and he had high cholesterol and high blood pressure, and they put him on these meds and they told him he'd be on it for the rest of his life. And at that moment, I just knew that it was the food that we were eating. So I went on this massive deep dive into health and nutrition and changed our diet significantly. And for those listening and paying attention, the doctors did say he'd be on these meds for the rest of his life. He was off them by the age of 30. And he won't go back on them ever again. He just won't. And he has no problem with high blood pressure or cholesterol today. When we did that, so I'm talking like nearly 20 years ago, it was relatively easy because we could go, all right, eat vegetables, not too much meat. My favorite book is In Defense of Food by Michael Pollan. And I literally read this book, understood the industrialization of food. GMO, understood, how they just promote what they want you to eat. So they say fat's bad because they want you to eat something else. And then they say something else is bad, so you eat something else and blah, blah, blah. So I became really aware about what is healthy food and what isn't healthy food, changed our diets, so much changed. Today, and I consider myself an educated person, it's so freaking hard because you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's telling the truth. I mean, I follow biohackers, nutritionists, coaches, doctors, functional medicine, and they all say freaking different things. And I would all say they're authorities that I listen to, help. How the hell do we know what is right? Who to listen to and who's telling us the actual truth as opposed to who's being paid to promote something.
Yeah. First off, I just want to applaud you for taking your nutrition into your hands because at least in the United States, our Western medical doctors are not trained, maybe just the very basics in nutrition, right? But
they're not at all, actually. They're not at all. The doctors here either. Nutrition is not part of the GP curriculum at any point.
Terrifying.
Exactly.
But that's really important to keep in mind, especially with, oh my gosh, antidepressants. Of course, some people thrive on those medications and they can be life-saving. But also, I know a lot of people who have changed their diet and come off of antidepressants because our gut and our brain are connected via the vagus nerve.
Yep.
So it's always important, if you're seeing a doctor, also either talk to another specialist or do your own research about your diet. I'm so happy to hear your story. But your question of information overload, right? Oh my goodness, today. Yes. I don't want to oversimplify this, but one quote that's really coming to mind is how people say, be your own guru.
Yep.
That applies
That's one I
in
use all the
nutrition
time,
too.
so that's perfect.
That totally applies in nutrition. So feel free to experiment with different protocols if you want. If your friend's doing intermittent fasting, maybe try it. Give yourself 30 or 60 days. Do you feel better or do you feel worse? It can be as simple as that. You know, like I have experimented with some fasting in my life, and I usually feel a lot worse because I actually run towards really low blood sugar versus any type of high blood sugar. So fasting and me do not get along. Plus, I love breakfast. I cannot live without breakfast food. But just like you said, you and your partner kind of have slightly different schedules. My partner practices time restricted eating and doesn't eat till 1 or 2 p.m. every day. Yeah. So that works for him. What works for him doesn't work for me. What works for your best friend might not work for you. So if there's a protocol that really like calls to you, that sounds exciting and intriguing, sure, try it. But also remember, coming back to what I said at the beginning, taking that gray area approach, you don't have to do every single rule, right? Say there's like, let's pick the carnivore diet. Say you're like, well, I don't know, that sounds kind of cool of just eating animal products for however long. Why don't you just start with eating a little bit more of maybe some like nose to tail eating and eat some organ meats and see how you feel. You don't have to just cut out every other food right off the bat. Or like you are interested in keto. Maybe keto interests you. Keto interested me for a long time, but I also love carbs. So I knew I would never go. So I knew I could never like long haul stick with a keto type diet, but I have done phases of my life where I'm eating higher fat and lower carb. So it's not keto, but it's a higher fat diet. And I was just experimenting with like, do I have more energy? Is my sleep better or is my sleep worse? Is my afternoon energy slump gone or did it actually get worse? How are my workouts, right? Just these really simple questions are going to tell you all that you need to know about how your body is responding to something. But the problem is we're so damn distracted in today's society that we don't even take the time to, you know, place a hand on your heart and be like, how's my body feeling today?
Yeah. I love that you said that because we, you know, from a human design point of view, my whole job is to help people get back in their body, you know, and feeling their body, and feeling, you know, that feedback loop. And you're right, with the speed in which we move these days, it's really hard. I know for me personally, like, I, you know, live very much in alignment with my design. I don't make decisions from the head. But, you know, like I have this paradox of very fast energy, but my decision-making is a slow energy. So it's challenging. I know firsthand, it's really challenging for people to take the time out and to slow down and to be like, you know, one of the things I would often be like, really? Was that really the result? I'm not sure. Was it? And I'd be, you know, constantly questioning myself. But one thing as you were speaking, like one of the things that, and I think it's everything, even though we have sort of said like the food's not designed to support your intuition, but I know for me, before I did keto, there was just something in me. There was just this like, you're not eating enough fat. You need to eat fat. And I just knew that was I, you know, even to the point where, so the one thing I eat that's on a consistent basis that's not good for me is chips. Crisps, I think you call. I don't know. That's the English they call them crisps, chips, whatever.
We call them
Potato
chips.
chips.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And, you know, I would notice myself craving them and I don't usually crave them. And I remember thinking, oh my God, it's fat. And I would go and have avocado on toast and go, oh my God, I feel so much better. It's the fat. How can we build that muscle? So we've talked about how it's hard. We've talked about that food is, you know, designed to make us want more of it. But what are some really simple steps that people listening could be like, all right, well, how do I do this intuitive thing? How do I start to trust my own feedback in my body? What are the steps I can be doing to be running that experiment?
Mm-hmm. So I'll walk you through some of my favorites that I incorporated. So like I briefly touched on, I used to compete at the professional level in bodybuilding. And so I had a very strict diet until my body said, why the heck are you doing this? And I lost my period and was way too lean. And I knew I had to take a step back from that. But I was very scared to put on weight. I was scared of everything, honestly. I was scared of how I would be viewed since I'm in the health space. If I wasn't as lean, what do people think? Oh my gosh, all the fears were running through my head. So I broke it down. At first, I knew I was probably over exercising too. So I started to ask myself in the mornings, am I doing this workout because this is how I want to move today? Or am I doing this because I feel like I should, or I feel like I have to? So that's kind of the other side of this wellness coin is exercise, right? But a lot of us, we want to do a yoga class, but our friend's doing HIIT and everyone says I should be doing more high intensity. So I'm going to go burn myself out on 700 HIIT classes when I really want to do yoga today.
I so want to jump in because I think this is such an important point. Obviously, human design gives us so many indicators of what's more aligned when it comes to exercise. But I love what you said when you said, you know, you're in the health space, what would other people think? And this influence of like, well, my friends are doing this, so then I should do it. This is a challenge. This is one of the ones I think is a biggie, because again, we're overriding our intuition instead of, like you say, checking in with our body in the morning. And again, it's not always easy. You know, you can check in and be like, oh, should I or shouldn't I? But I love even the language, you know, like if you feel like you should do it as opposed to you want to do it is a pretty clear indicator. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. That's a great question to ask. And like you said, there can be all these moving pieces like distracting us. And that's why I started with just my workouts. So I didn't really change anything except, okay, I'm spending way too much time in the gym and doing extra cardio. Let's start asking my question there. And so I made those changes, you know, over like 2 to 4 weeks, again, not overnight. And then I thought, okay, the next thing I'm nervous about is my confidence with my body starting to change. And so I thought to myself, okay, when do I naturally feel confident during the day? Like, what are little things that make me feel confident and how can I build those into my life more? And what I added in was pole dance. Actually, I started doing that as like another fun fitness activity, but also it is very, at least for me, it's been very, very, very empowering to dance in a different way and to have this new athletic endeavor. And a very judgment-free zone, I found.
Yeah, I love that.
So I was like proactive with that too.
I love that. I just want to go back. So this thing, and I'm going to highlight it because it's so important. Picking one thing at a time. Yes, manifesting generators, we're talking to you too. You are not excluded from this, because when we want to change something, the more we try to change it once, the harder the change is. Okay. So I love that you said just doing your exercise first, just getting that feedback loop. And I love that you actually then went to, okay, your body's changing, you know, the confidence piece. One of the things I want to talk to with the exercise piece is, you know, I've talked about how I'm a manifesting generator. I eat a lot. And when I was that girl. I was at, you know, HIIT classes all the time. I was at the gym all the time. I was walking like so much, doing all the things. And my fear was, but I eat so much. Like if I don't do all this, far out, I'll just put weight on. And the thing that was so like mind blowing, yet it shouldn't have been, like it's pretty obvious, is the moment I stopped caning myself in the gym, I didn't eat half as much. And I was like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think of that. So I think that's also really powerful. Picking one thing at a time, working through like, what are the results I'm getting? What's the thing that's coming up next? Okay, now it's my confidence because my body's changing, and then working on that piece and breaking it down and trusting yourself to go through the process. I would always also imagine that, you know, you get much better feedback and connection to your intuition that way. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. It's literally like if you have a history of chronic dieting or over exercising or just following rules and being really strict in any area of your life, really, you're going to turn down that knob, that volume dial of your intuition. So it's just this practice of turning it back up. And so it does get easier and easier. You know, now, gosh, when I first kind of started this journey more to intuition a couple years ago, I would ask myself like, okay, body, every morning I made it part of my routine to ask myself, what does my body need today? And there were a lot of days where I just got nothing. And then for a while it was just rest. Every day it was just myself asking for more rest, which is so funny because now I know so much more about my human design as a projector. But
and a mental projector, there's no consistent energy below the neck. Like that's, of course you need rest, of course.
Yes, which I'm still learning that. But yeah, then now I can, ask that question and even feel things in my body or get visuals or like a sentence instead of a word or a glimpse. And it's just so much more clear and it's easier then for me to act on it. So it's just like anything else, right? We're relearning how to connect with ourselves. It's a skill we need to practice. And I know some people listening might be like, but I just want a 30-day program. I just want to follow the program and get my results. And I know that sounds easier when you have a million things to do. Maybe you're a mom and you're working full time and you have all these responsibilities. So you just have to follow a plan. But what do you do when the plan ends? That's always the question I want people to come back to.
Yeah.
Because if you can learn how to trust yourself again, if you can relearn how to listen to your intuition and your hunger and fullness and how you honor those signals from your body, that is forever sustainable, right?
Yeah. And I love what you say, because ultimately when we want to plan, we're giving away our power. We're literally giving away our responsibility. And yes, it is going to be harder to fit in time to be in silence or in conversation with your body. However, it's a lifelong solution. It's like you say, it's not a quick fix. And this is something that that we all need to be conscious of, like lifelong solutions, the slightly slower path, the slightly harder path. This is flow. This is growth. This is actually what we're all banging on about. This is what we want, but we have to give ourselves the time to make that connection, to actually check in. I want to ask you this question because again, it's come up for me in the past. So I'm sure there's listeners that are like, that want to know, when you check in with your body, let's say you check in with your body, what do you need today? And you actually said it once, but I really want to go in a bit deeper. Like I know for me, I would ask and I get nothing, day after day after day. So then my ego that's all dressed up in a very, smart suit, and she's very clever and she knows what we should be doing. And she actually sounds like she could be my intuition sometimes, jumps in and says, you should be doing this. How do we actually build that connection with our body? Like, how do we get those answers aligned to our, physical intuition, as opposed to just letting the ego jump in and go, actually, let's just do this because no one else is telling us what to do.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I love how you said, and she also often sounds like my intuition. Like you are so right. And this is where I really like to help people lean into feminine energy practices. So I know me, I lived most of my life unaware that I was like purely living in my masculine energy. And I think that's pretty common in Western society, any developed country. Yeah. So adding in simple things, right? Like play. One of my clients was exactly like you said. She kept getting nothing and she was feeling really frustrated. Like I'm not connecting. And I asked her what were some of her favorite things to do as a kid. And she listed off a couple things. And I was like, do you do anything that resembles those now? Like, do you do any kind of playful, creative exercises? And she said no, which I think is what a lot of us would say if we were unaware of this. So that's a great question to ask yourself, is like, how can I add in more play and time for fluidity, time for creativity, and allow that space? Because oftentimes we're just like, okay, I took a deep breath and I asked myself and nothing came up. Okay, well, I need to get to work now. So fine, body, whatever,
Yeah.
We almost get mad at ourselves. And then we just immediately fill up our space back. And I at least feel that for your intuition to come through, you need to have that space back. You need to take time for yourself and to let your creative juices flow, to let yourself play, to not have your to-do list just never ending and every second of your day scheduled. So the more that you can come back to pleasure and silliness and laughter, those can be some really, really beautiful practices to allow your divine feminine and intuition to come stronger.
Yeah. And dancing in the shower. I can definitely
Yes.
give that, because I tell you what, I used to spend so much time in the bathroom, well, not so much time, but time in the bathroom. And I'd be thinking and working and on my phone. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is my most private space. You know, I've got, you know, teenage children and a husband who has no boundaries sometimes. This is the only place that I'm like locking the door and spending time on my own. So yeah, I was like, oh, I'm getting rid of anything that is thinking or working, and I'm turning the music up really freaking loud, and I can't hear any of you knocking on the door. And I always found like that was a beautiful place to start to take that playfulness back. But I also recommend at any age, you know, like try stuff that I always wanted to surf as a kid, but didn't. I always wanted to ride a skateboard, but didn't. And these are the things that, you know, I'm doing now in my late 40s, because I just want to be able to have that lightness and that playfulness. And life can get so freaking serious. We just need to take a break from that. And even, you know, the other thing I'm going to throw in there is we can also do that to our like our spiritual practices. We can make it so serious and heavy and structured, and we have to do this and we have to do that. And I'm, you know, the worst at it sometimes, that we actually lose our connection. We like choke the connection out of ourselves because we're not having fun. And at the end of the day, what we are doing is we're raising our frequency to connect with higher frequencies, you know, God, universe, source. And if we're in this heavy frequency, then we're not there. And the only way we can get there is joy and playfulness and all of these lighter frequencies. So yeah, I just felt the need to add that in.
Yeah, I know. It's almost like we think we can walk through life and at some point we're just going to fall into a puddle of pleasure that's just going to be right in front of us.
Wouldn't that be good?
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, but really it's a habit, just like you said, right? Anything you do is a habit. So taking that time for pleasure, whether it's, you know, sexual pleasure is great, but pleasure in all forms, and giving that to yourself is a very, very underrated and powerful tool.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Could not agree more. So, Caroline, where can people find you and how can people work with you?
Yes, thank you for this amazing conversation. This was so fun. And a great place for people to find me is my own podcast, which you will be on very soon. I'm so excited. And that is called Macros, Muscle, and Manifestation. It is about everything we talked about today. How do you kind of bring that holistic, more spiritual lens to your health and wellness? And then I'm most active on Instagram at Caroline Ofenstein, just my full name. And you can find, you know, the link in my bio has all those fun ways to connect with me and work with me further.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me. I feel like there's just that beautiful balance with you between the science and the intuitive. And, you know, that I really believe that we can serve people when we understand the value of, you know, both sides of the camp, and making sure that we have the full picture to really step into our own power and, like you say, become our own guru. So Caroline, thank you so much for joining. It's just been awesome chatting to you.
Yes, it's been so fun. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for being here. We will put all of Caroline's details in the show notes, and I so look forward to having you on the next podcast. Bye for now.
Thanks everyone for being here all the way to the end of the podcast. I hope you got lots of value out of it. I certainly had a lot of fun doing it. Could I please ask that you share this podcast with friends if you found it valuable? And also, bonus points, could you leave a review for me as well on Apple? It would be greatly appreciated. If at any point you would like to be on the podcast, or you've got questions that you'd like me to discuss on the podcast, by all means get on my socials and DM me. Everything you need is there in the show notes. Have an awesome day. Bye for now.